So, Toqger and Drive came back this week after a week's hiatus because I've forgotten the reason. So, we're back to the normal stuff. Toqger 35. That is definitely the worst mecha combination out of Super Sentai yet. Okay, so the Shadow Line invades the Hyper Russia terminal after Zet gets angry because, well, he hasn't absorbed Grita's sparkling shininess. I'm forgetting the term, excuse me. And, well, as they invade en masse, the Hyper Russia's transformation is used against it, because it's the platform that folds in on itself to form the train form, and then has to transform again to enter Megazord mode. So pretty much all the Shadow Line do is ram it as it's folding up, and it's forced back down into the open configuration, and then it's pretty easy to invade straight from there. Yeah, this is pretty obvious a design flaw. I mean, one of the consistent complaints for Toqger has been the horrendous designs, or, well, I think they're horrendous. Most people just say they're lackluster or lacking in imagination for a series that, well, has a big focus on being imagination. The Toqger are alerted, and the Shadow Town effect prevents them from entering it with the Russias, so they have to invade on their own. Except before they do, the president of the Shadow Line somehow escapes the terminal and gets to them and tell them they need all 13 Russias for a super combination which requires the Hyper Russia terminal be retaken. Why did this not get told to them earlier? In fact, why are you telling them this now when they don't have the Hyper Russia available? It's so Akira can be motivated to get back the Drill Russia so they can do the final combination. But narratively, it just seems wrong, especially since, according to the canon of the series, the Drill Russia has always been a Dark Liner, a Kura Liner. Now, an easy way to fix this was the Drill Russia, that it was originally a Rainbow Line train, but it's been lost for so long, they'd completely forgotten about it. That would have been a good way to mediate this, that it had been taken by the Shadows for so long that it was indistinguishable from a Shadow Line train. Instead, he likes trains. He likes all trains. And he likes drill trains. That is the reason the Drill Russia is used to combine with the rest of them. Yes. Okay, so Akira splits from the group to go to battle Schwartz over it, while the rest get their asses handed to them by the three generals, because Zet's off on the sidelines being mopey because he still can't take Grita's shine. I really am forgetting the term right now. I hate my memory. So they lose, and Zet's about to take Wright's shininess by devouring him, and then, like, wings that become spider things that grasp around him like a closing ribcage, and that's actually a really cool effect, as his chest opens up to a black hole that's going to devour Wright, and out pops Grita, and literally like a jack-in-the-box, and pushes Wright away from being devoured by Zet. Now, personally, I would have liked to see how this goes, how Wright's entire personality would clash with Zet. In fact, if they end up doing that later, I'd find it kind of interesting. The show would probably screw it up, but I'd find it interesting. So, this proves a couple things. one, that the shadow of Greta is more than just memories being resurged by the parts of her essence that are in him. She's actually completely still fine in there. Which begs a question. I'm probably getting the wrong interpretation from this, but Noir, Greta's mother, is still waiting for her chance to strike, and she knows she has to do it soon because Zed is becoming impatient with Greta's resilience, because he's, while having absorbed her shininess, he hasn't actually gotten it from her essence yet. At least that's what I get from it. So, what's her... I hate this. I hate it when I do this. I just should leave these open. Madame Noah. No, that's Noir. Mork. Yeah, Mork is more and more insistent about, well, crazed, I should say, about getting rid of everything shining around him and destroying the obsession Zed has. And it's not without reason, but I think it's blinding her far too much, and it's just reinforcing Zet's apathy to everything Shadowline involved. As I believe I discussed with some of my earlier vlogs, I would have thought it interesting if Zed just completely abandoned everything Shadowline related out of just sheer apathy and interest, because, well, I guess he really can't, because he's releasing more and more of his inner darkness, because it's that vast. Except I don't even know how to phrase it. I hate it when I do that. Anyways, that allows the Toqger time to regroup and Akira to get the drill rusher from Schwartz. Because as they're fighting, it's two parallel battles. So Akira keeps getting called by the conductor to tell him to get back to the Toqger because they're in trouble. So what Akira eventually does when fighting Schwartz is beg him for the drill rusher back. And this is interesting in a couple ways, in that the two have a history. They're technically still on opposite sides, but they've both been touched by something that confounds their experiences as members of the Shadowline. Akira with the rainbow, and Schwartz with Greta's unnatural for their realm kindness. And so, to get the Russia back, Schwartz agrees to a promise from Akira, except we're not told what it is. Which means this is probably going to be something plot relevant later that will probably tie into him either betraying the other Toqger for their trains, which makes him lament at the end of the episode by playing the harmonica, or some secret plan to free Greta from Zet, or kill Zet, or something. And I'm kind of interested, because that seemed like a decent plot thread to start us on what's essentially starting in on the endgame, because we're 35 episodes into a series that on average lasts no more than 51 episodes. So we're in the last fourth of the arc. We're about to enter the last fourth of the series. Yay. Yeah, that was the most interesting part of the episode, because them charging the Rainbow Line again, or the Hyper Russia Terminal, it involves just getting all of the rushes to fire on the guard Coraliners, and then fire again on the darkness that it was surrounding the Hyper Russia Terminal, completely dispersing what at the beginning of the episode was incapable of being pierced by the normal trains when they bashed it, implying they needed the drill Resha to get through it. No. The entire plot of the episode was, oh, we need this to get through this barrier of darkness that surrounds the base. Then they don't use it to get into the base. In fact, had they called all the Reshas they had available at the beginning of the episode, they could have probably thwarted the attack in its entirety, and then there would have been no need to show off the final combination mech for the series in this episode. This is an idiot plot. I'm realizing this as I'm saying it, really. Yeah. The way the episode is framed. Start of the episode. Oh, we can't enter it, we don't have enough power. Oh, but we only tried with 6 trains. Why don't we try the rest of them? No, because we have to say that for the end of the episode. And then they're like, how did they get this much power? And I'm like, you've been fighting them for how long? You've seen all these trains. You gotta know they have them in reserve. Anyways, on to Toku Rainbow. Okay, all of the Reshas are made up of 2 components. The actual main train car that goes into the... whose small toy versions go into the morpher, and then that representation hooks onto a secondary train, except for the drill Resha and the shield Resha, which don't have rear components to them. They just become an arm unit. The rest of them have a second component that either detaches into a second arm unit or becomes part of a greater limb. The part that in the toy line goes into the morpher is the only part that docks with the Hyper Resha to form the... One of my problems with Goseiger was that it seemed that the support mechs were kind of pointless. They were just a head component that docked with a connector slot. So it was kind of lackluster compared to a bunch of other combining secondary mechs we'd seen in previous series. And it didn't mean that they didn't have some cool combinations to emphasize the various themologies of Goseiger. It just seemed lackluster. But with the entire blandness of the Toqger mecha, it comes off even worse. I mean, the platform just stands up. That's it. And then suddenly a mech with just 13 train cars docked in various positions, and the 14th, the Hyper Resha, the part of the Hyper Resha goes into it, forming part of the head. And it's so dull. I mean, say what you will about Engine G12, but when you combine all 12 of the units, that actually forms the entire body. There are no missing parts. You pretty much just amputate all the limbs from the Toqger mecha, from the other Toqger mecha, to form the Toku Rainbow. And it's bad. It is the worst looking Sentai final combination mech. And I used to think that was Samurai Hao, aka the Samurai Ultrazord. No, it wasn't an Ultrazord, it was a Gigazord. That name is so fucking stupid. Yeah, no, it was either Samurai Hao or Geki Ranger's final combination, because it wasn't actually the final combination. Yeah. It's just... it has size. That's pretty much it. The limbs that formed the Hyper Resha Teo's arms are now attachable sword guns, in that the gun parts extend into swords, and then it holds out its arms and forms a rainbow barrier behind it to supercharge everything to kill stuff. And it's just so bland. I mean, I've discussed before about how, since the trains are all imagination-based, it probably drains the imagination to power them. So that's why they're so bland and lifeless. But no, it should be more creative. And the consistent problem is the series that has a big focus about imagination being a plot point is in itself unimaginative. Though there was this element at the end, as the battle ended, where all the Toqger collapsed but Akira, that might lead to something else. In that forming the higher combinations is draining their imagination away. So there's that second component to the whole drain them, to use them until they can't be used anymore elements to the president of the Rainbow Lines wish to switch out for another team that we might see or not. On to Drive. I've more or less pinned down what's bugging me about this series, and I'd like to thank internet reviewer Derek the Bard for helping me figure that out. He and I have briefly discussed the show a couple times on Twitter. Really check him out. He's really good. You can see him on Geek Vision, which is one of the reviewer aggregate sites. Oh, and he's also on Blip. Look for the show Chasing the Muse if you don't know who I'm talking about. Anyways, the issue seems to be tonal dissonance between, trying to be lighthearted and trying to have these serious story elements, so it's not congealing into a greater whole that's just leaving, something to be desired. I still find it entertaining, but not as much as the hype's worn down. This episode is kind of an example of that, because the quirks are starting to grate on me. I discussed before about how characters can be quirky but not have anything else to them, and we're kind of hitting that point with some of the supporting cast. They're a joke without actually being there. Now, I praise some of the elements of the shift cars in that they're sentient, but there's not enough focus to them because, they're going to be the collectibles. But at least it's attempted. The other part is there's a problem with the exposition in that we're getting story elements but not congealing. For example, there's this part where Krim, aka Mr. Belt, is pointing out that Masha and Chaser is using elements of the Proto Drive equipment. Now, we haven't actually gotten much about Proto Drive. We just know that there was a black armored version of Drive that was around at the global freeze. Except we haven't gotten much details about him. I don't think he's actually been named more than as a throwaway line, and that's the problem. These critical moments of exposition are becoming throwaway lines instead of taking focus on... It's like the what's a Kamen Rider thing. He still doesn't know what a Kamen Rider is, but everybody keeps calling him that, and that is... There should have just been 2 minutes where that was answered, and they're not actually addressing it. They're not addressing the important bits of exposition, and that is frustrating because that's the same problem as Power Rangers Megaforce. Yeah. It's still more enjoyable in that, it feels like it's moving forward instead of, there's still a moment where they can reveal this because it's being continually brought up. And, Shinosuke's bringing up that he wants to know and understand what it is, but the priority is the cases and what's going on in the now. And yeah, that's probably why Drive is not going to be considered that good if they don't address these soon. Because, you can only tease someone with a mystery for so long while it's accepted as fact. But hopefully Drive Episode 0 that is coming out with Drive versus... No, the Movie War 2015, and we'll get that subbed and that introduced to us. But the problem is, Double did not ignore the exposition about the boss. It's just, it was a painful moment that, when revealed, you understood the full connotations, except you got enough of it beforehand to see why. Or, I haven't watched Double in a while, so I might be a bit wrong with that. AG, you wondered why, but you saw enough of his inner turmoil that it could lead you on. Plus, he gave the impression that there wasn't much more to him than what you saw, and then hits you with the revelations. Anyways, this episode try and showcases Shinosuke as a bit more naive than we've been led to believe about his slacker persona due to the actions of the Roidmude and their victims. See, the Roidmudes of the episode, Crash Roidmude and his disciples are attacking food trucks. And, there was this interesting observation I saw on Tumblr about them. The truck driver that keeps getting attacked the most, and the 3 human forms of the Roidmudes, they're all Sentai and Kamen Rider series alumni. I think one of them was Hurricane Yellow from Hurricaneger. Forgive me if I don't have their names, I can't find the post. I actually looked for it before we started today. So that actor illusions I always like. But they're attacking food vehicles because the owner of the company, one of the owners of the company, was smuggling some type of liquid explosive, some high explosive item. Except we are never told what the explosive is. Now, my thinking... Well, I should explain this point first. Chaser is on a bend about why should Shinosuke protect humans, and he's being really naive about ignoring the evils of humanity because Chaser believes evil, in fact, which might feed into the proto-drive thing. He became a Roidmude on purpose because he was betrayed or something, and if that's the case, I would like to see that in episode 0. I'm just speculating at this point because we don't have much on him. Anyways, the explosives in the truck. It's a really surprising thing because, well, the guy who owns the company that had these in them was really nice and seeming repentant and sorrowful that he had to keep making the shipments in this climate and putting his drivers in danger. Like, really overselling it. And then you realize he's doing that on purpose. You look back on that and see, no, it's not just hokey acting. He's, like, overselling it to the officers that are there asking him questions. And I think that's both a bit of not exactly fridge brilliance, but reaction. Oh, that's why they were doing that. And both, okay, if you're a professional criminal, you should know how to lie better than that. It's part of the tonal dissonance, and it's trying to seem silly, but it's also trying to address these serious issues. And I think they should have done something a bit differently. We've just got fallout from... We're still getting fallout from Gaim, so instead of shifting between the silliness that you need to be a bit more lighthearted than the stuff you did before, and then you're clashing with the series subtext that is part of pretty much every Kamen Rider series. I mean, Fours, while seeming silly, was one of those that addressed addiction and, school setting societal problems. I'm a bit off on that, but that's essentially what I'm pointing out. So it's clashing with the... Yeah, it's still... like I said, it's clashing with the quirks. I'm repeating myself. But the thing with the explosives is... The company is health food and medical supplies. So, an easy way to remedy that is make the explosive nitroglycerin. Now, nitroglycerin is a pretty infamous explosive. It's very volatile, it's a lot of things. But nitroglycerin is also a component to a couple different types of medicines. In fact, I remember this one episode of The Simpsons where it was a Sideshow Bob episode where he had to take nitroglycerin for some ailment, and, Bart getting the thing away gets him to fake his death. Now, he was faking, but I've looked this up. There are several medical treatments that require volatile chemicals. My mother, in fact, takes my mother has MS, and she takes a treatment that is considered rather volatile to a healthy person. Chemotherapy is another one that uses types of toxins to remove cancerous elements. So, I'm kind of want to see the next parts to see if it's actually a really bad guy and he was just faking, overreacting to try and lie, or if it's all misunderstanding and Chaser is using it to break the will of Shinosuke by deceiving him. Because it seemed like the explosive when it went off, and since it's in liquid form, there aren't that many liquid explosives out there that just you toss it and it explodes when jostled, or exposed to air, or exposed to water. There were conflicting things. So I'm curious. There are a couple ways they could go with this. We also got the first signs of Drive's next full form, because in the first encounter, Shinosuke was overwhelmed by Crash because of its superior strength and power. Now, type speed is really, really fast, but that's the most it has going for it. The tire changes it has are take away its speed for flexibility. Well, it reduces him back to speed of a faster but still normal range Kamen Rider. So, and it was the first, we also were shown the first shift car that type speed couldn't utilize. A dump truck that equipped it with a drill. Why is a shift car that looks like a dump truck equipping a drill? They're both construction vehicles, but one is not equivalent to the other. And of course, Drive can't utilize it properly, and it drags him all over the place, and it still gets them to retreat. And here's another one of the total dissonance things. They're like, oh man, we gotta retreat, and then it part cuts to them running away in a comedic manner, and it doesn't... It's not cohesive. But yeah, Shift Wild is going to be the power attacker type focusing more on strength. And, well, Shift Wild makes it... The Shift car that goes to type Wild makes its appearance at the end of the episode, and he tries to change into the form, and it requires a mental component to it. And the writer for this series is Riku Sanjo, and he previously did Kamen Riders Double and Fours, as well as Kyoryuger. Now, a recurring element to all of these is that when there's a significant form change, I could think of Fang Joker and Fire... Well, actually, a bunch of the states of fours, that there's a mental or test that they need to do before they can access the form. And after they do it once, and after they fail once or twice, then there's no actual issue anymore with accessing it at all. And we're hitting this again with the Type Well transformation, because he tries to change forms and it doesn't work. This is so they can build it up as a big thing in the next episode, and then it will ramp down in intended usefulness over time, because it's the first form change. The first real form change, anyways. And it's frustrating that he keeps repeating his tropes. Well, more frustrating that, you could have delayed, 10 minutes and not made it available into the next episode, and, addressed it in full then, instead of making it, oh yeah, we're gonna get this now, and then, no, you're cheesing because you did this before. There's also this, I'm gonna actually look it up this time. Sorry. There's this subplot with Rina, the scientist lady of the unit, going off with a higher official in the totem pole, the Public Services Commission. And she's also spying on all of Drive's battles, as she's been the one that's been predicting and tipping off the public safety units on where the attacks are going to take place, because Drive gets to them early enough when he's not being interrupted, like with Chaser. So there's also this component of, is the Public Safety Commission actually setting up these attacks to get data on Drive? Because there's this inkling that Rina's in the know about Drive, because she was seen last episode stealing one of the shift cars. So this is part of that character inconsistency thing again, in that the cast is vast already, but we don't really know much about anyone more than Chinosuke and Kiriko. And they're going to hit us all with it fast, because at the moment, all of the supporting cast are quirks. The detective that doesn't believe what he can't see with his eyes, the super nerd, the boss that decides everything on fortunes, the emotionless one, the slacker, and belt guy, and the scientist. The crazy scientist. It's still early in the show, so they have time to develop them, but there's still something to be desired, I guess. And it's episode 5. It's where I can usually tell whether I'm going to like a show throughout, or if it's going to suck or be mediocre. And I'm still enjoying Drive, but its issues are starting to wear on me, and that's not a good thing. Force and Wizard had the same problem. I like those series, but I wouldn't count them as this is the best thing ever. Not like I did with double O's and Gaim. Of the, I watched them as they're coming out series. Trying to think of anything else. Oh, Chaser got form change. In that Brain and Heart created some special dark shift cars, Roidmude type shift cars, for Kim to use as power-ups. And we're pretty much just getting a feature of his abilities that took focus away from the monsters this time. Because he was shown being able to steal shift cars, the thing that led into the prototype bit, and now he gets his own shift cars that can power him up. And he can easily match and outpower Drive right now, which makes for a good rivalrous character in that the main character has to be clever in dealing with the guy. We still don't know his deal, but it's supposedly relating to Kamen Rider Mach, who we've gotten more details about. I don't like his suit. I mean, Drives annoys me with the tire sash thing, and I'll discuss Type Wild next week, but there's something... Yeah, Drive at this point is becoming something to be desired. It needs something to make it better, I guess. Or maybe I'm just bored right now. I'm something. That's all I got. I'll see y'all next week.